Hello, welcome everyone to this channel. My name is Janet. I am working through the King James's Bible. Today I'm in the book of Samuel and I'm going to be covering one of the biggest stories that most people know of, but do you know the intricate details? And that is the story of David and Goliath, which we will be covering today. So if you're interested to learn more, then hold on, because here we go. So today we're going to be covering chapters 16 and 17 in the first book of Samuel. Now yesterday we saw that Saul, the king of Israel, was no longer to be king chosen by God. God has rejected him because basically he's not been following God's laws. So he tells Samuel at the beginning of chapter 16 that what is it that how long are you going to keep grieving for Saul because he's been rejected now by me? I want you to get yourself ready. Get your horn and your oil, because you are going to anoint somebody in Bethlehem amongst the Jesse family. That's what he wants him to do, to go there and anoint a new king of God's choosing. Now Samuel at this point doesn't want to do that because he's a bit worried about Saul finding out. Obviously, if Saul found this out, he would not be happy. And God says to him, look, take a young cow with you and say to the family of Jesse and the people of Bethlehem to come together that you're going to make a sacrifice. Okay, Samuel agrees and off he heads to Bethlehem. When he gets to Bethlehem, calls the people forth. Now they are a bit fearful at this time because he killed the Amorite king the last time they saw him. So they were kind of worried, like, oh gosh, what's going to happen next? But he said, no, I've come in peace. I'm here to make a sacrifice. Bring everyone together, the Jesse family, come forth to witness this sacrifice, and so he can consecrate them all. So they come forth, each one. And as each one is coming forth to be consecrated, Samuel is looking at the eldest brother of the Jesse family and he's thinking, oh, this guy, he looks the perfect one to be king, but no, God doesn't choose him. The next son comes forth, no, not choosing him. Then the next, no, not choosing him. And so Samuel asks, is everybody here from the Jesse family? Because God has not chosen anyone that he's consecrated so far. And then Jesse, the father, says, no, my young son is out at the fields. He's looking after my sheep. So Samuel says, well, can you bring him forth? Because we're not going to finish today until he comes forth. So a young boy, he's the youngest one of the family. He's fair-skinned. And he has a good heart. And he is the one that God chooses to anoint as king. So Samuel anoints David as king over Israel. And then he returns back to his home in Ramah. And the Spirit of the Lord moves over to David. Now, as this happens to David, on the other side we have Saul, where the Spirit of God has removed itself from him. And instead he has the distress. And his servants realize this. They're like, something's up. You don't look well. You look like, he's lost that spirit. And they can see it. It's clear to them. So they say, we need to bring somebody who can play a harp, an expert harpist, because that music will lift your spirits and it will make you well. So Saul says to them, okay, bring me forth this harpist. So who could it be, possibly? Would you know it? It is David, the youngest son of Jesse. He is a wonderful harp player and he is brought forth to Saul. And he plays the harp and Saul's heart is lifted. So isn't it strange how God works? That, the person who is to overthrow Saul is actually helping him right now in becoming more well within his spirit. So from this day forth, David becomes Saul's armor-bearer, which means his chief assistant in battle. And so whenever David played his harp, Saul would feel better. And this closes chapter 16, as we move now into chapter 17, which is the great story of David and Goliath. So picture this. We have the Israelites on one side and the Philistines on the other. Two big armies between Socho and Azekah, excuse my pronunciation. Now these are two great mountains on each side, and there is a valley in between, and the armies are on each side, camped, ready, waiting. Now obviously the Philistines have a huge army and they've got a lot of weaponry, which the Israelites don't have. And this one man comes down from the mountain, and he comes forth to challenge the Israelites. He is a huge man. He's about 8 feet, 5 inches tall, approximately. He's got a bronze helmet, he's got bronze armory on, he's got a javelin, he's got a spear, and he is huge. And he says to the Israelites, "Why have you come to line up to battle? I am a Philistine, and you are servants to Saul. Choose a man to fight me, and if he wins, we will become your servants. But if I win, you will become our servants, and you will serve me." Big, bold statements from this big, giant man. And you can imagine the Israelites are trembling and like, oh. So he's asking one man from the Israelites to come fight him. Who could that man be? I mean, Saul is probably the ideal person. He is the biggest of them all, although not as big as Goliath, but he is the biggest. So, so Goliath is stood there, "Bring a man forth and fight." And the Israelites are in fear. They're not doing anything. They're kind of like, oh. Meanwhile, the young boy David, he is out. He's sort of coming obviously to the battle with Saul, but he goes back and he takes care of his father's sheep at the same time. He's a busy young man who has 3 older brothers. His brothers are Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah. And his older brothers are at the battlefield with Saul. Now 40 days and 40 nights pass, and there's a lot of shouting going on, and Goliath is mocking them, "You cowards, you don't, come on, fight, fight," kind of thing. So there's a lot of back and forth going on between these two armies. Now David's asked by his father Jesse to go and take some food out to his brothers and the other men, and to find out, bring back news, like to what's going on. So off David goes. And David hears Goliath shouting, challenging the Israelites. And he sees the Israelites in fear. They're not full of God's faith. They are fearful. And then Saul offers a reward. He offers a cash reward along with a princess and a tax exemption for anybody who will fight Goliath. He's getting desperate. It's like, come on, somebody come forth. There are benefits if you do this. And nobody's coming forth. So David can't contain himself. He obviously has such faith in the Lord. And he's like, come on. This is a Philistine. He's uncircumcised. We are men of the Lord of Israel. We can take him on. Come on. Now David's older brother, Eliab, gets annoyed with David. And he's like, what are you doing? What are you saying? You're just a young boy kind of thing. Where's the sheep? Are you not looking after them? It's like, get back, because he doesn't want to be forced to do it. It's almost like he feels like his younger brother's egging him on. Get yourself out there, and go and fight. But this doesn't deter David. He's like, no, and he keeps protesting, to others, and they say the same to him. You're like, who are you? You're just a young boy. Get back to tending your sheep. But as David is going on like this, Saul overhears, he hears from others that this young boy is challenging people to go out and fight. So he brings David forth, and David at this point says, I will go out and I will fight against Goliath. And Saul is kind of like, you're only a young boy. This guy Goliath is older, he's bigger, he's stronger, and he's used to war. He's used to being in battle. How can you win against such a giant? And David says, I'm a shepherd. Part of my job, I have to fight lions, and I have fought them and won, and bears who have tried to capture the sheep. Now if I have the Lord on my side, being able to fight these huge beasts, then I can fight this Philistine. So Saul obviously sees that the Lord is within David, and he says, go forth and may the Lord be with you. Now Saul tries to give David a lot of armor to protect him, so he puts all this on him, and David's kind of like, oh, it's too cumbersome, I can't win with this on, so he takes it off. And instead, He gets his staff, he gets some stones, 5 stones he selects from the brook, and he takes them into his bag with his sling and heads out towards the Philistines with such courage and bravery. So as he's approaching the Philistines, they come towards him. And I mean, Goliath sees this young boy in front of him and he's like, "What? You have come to fight me? You're just a young boy. I'm going to rip you to pieces." But David is not scared at all. He stands his ground and he says, "I have the Lord of Israel within me, and he will bring you into my hands." And Goliath kind of laughs, thinking, "Come on then, let's go. This is going to take seconds." So he moves forward with his army behind him. David then runs towards him, gets his sling out, gets a stone and whoosh, hits him right on the forehead with his stone. And it penetrates so strongly and so deeply that it knocks the great Goliath to the ground. And as this happened, David goes to Goliath's sword, gets it out, and he chops off Goliath's head. Now the Philistines are so shocked that this has happened that they flee. And the Israelites see what's happened and they make a counter run towards them. So they go flying after the Philistines who are running away. They battle with them and then they come back to the tents, the Philistines' tents, and they plunder all of their things. And David takes the head of Goliath and takes it to Jerusalem with him, along with Goliath's armour. And he puts it into his tent. Now Saul, on seeing this victory, is like, "Who is this young man? Who is he? Whose family does he come from?" And he asks his chief commander, who says, "I don't know, I'm not sure." So he goes, "Bring forth this young man." So he brings forth David in front of him and he said, "Who are you? Whose family are you from?" And he said, "I am from the family of Jesse from Bethlehem." And on that note, we close chapter 17. So he's stood forth, he's won the battle between this huge man, Goliath, and he stood there with the very great acknowledgement from Saul, the king of Israel, unbeknowing that he soon will be that king. So what a story of courage, of bravery, and of faith, all wrapped into one, and what can actually be achieved when you have that faith within you. So that concludes today's video, and we will return as always tomorrow with more chapters within the book of Samuel. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.